Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you reviews of the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and on this podcast, I'll be talking about all things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of film and television together. On today's episode, I am talking about Fargo Season 5. This season came out, started in 2023, just recently ended in 2024. It's created by Noah Hawley and produced by the Coen brothers, along with Noah Hawley. This particular season of this anthology show stars Juno Temple from Ted Lasso. You also have Jennifer Jason Leigh. You have David Risdall. You have Joe Keery from Stranger Things. You have Sam Spruill and Dave Foley and John Hamm, among many other great actors and actresses in this season of television, which this season is set in Minnesota and North Dakota in the fall of 2019. It stars Juno Temple as Dorothy Dot Lyon, a seemingly typical Midwestern housewife living in Scandia, Minnesota, whose mysterious past comes back to haunt her after she lands in hot water with the authorities. I obviously absolutely love the original film, Fargo, by the Coen brothers. And when they decided to adapt it into a TV show, I had no idea how it would work or what it would be like. And the first season I remember being great. But I don't know if I kept up with or just fell off. Regardless, I've only seen the first season of the show and never really went back to it. Didn't hear the greatest things about the following seasons. The second season may have been good, but I think there were some rocky seasons in there. Regardless, I fell off, had no reason to go back until I had heard great things about this fifth season. So, because I did like the first season, because I do love the original film, I felt, why not? People are talking, saying good things about Season 5 of Fargo. Let's check it out. The other great thing, thankfully, is that the show is an anthology series. So, each season is its own unique story. Very similar in many ways to the American Horror Story franchise of shows. So I didn't have to go back and rewatch anything, didn't have to do any homework, was able to just put on Season 5 of Fargo and enjoy. And from the very first episode of Season 5, I was absolutely hooked, instantly hooked. I loved Juno Temple in Ted Lasso as her character in Ted Lasso. I just a show that I absolutely love her character in that one. And not only to see her in this season is great, in the show is great, but to see her kicking ass, her character kicking ass, makes it even more of an addicting show, which in the first episode, there are multiple moments where this character is in trouble and she finds a way out. Compared in the show, her character is compared to MacGyver, which I found to be very fitting, considering her inventiveness of how she got out of these situations. But I also love the story. The story in Season 5 is great, in addition to the great Juno Temple. Some great performances as well that would probably be over the top, if not for the fact that it's the Fargo TV show. If not for the fact that the kind of the accent of people in that area is a bit cartoonish as well, but not so over the top where it's just ridiculous. I think it captures that unique flavor that Fargo, the original film, brought, which I appreciate that as well. And it's such a great show. It's inspired me to go back and actually rewatch the first season and then watch the remaining 3 seasons that I have not watched yet. And the goal of that is obviously not just to be entertained by more stories of this franchise, which we'll see how bad the franchise actually gets. But the ultimate goal is to rank each season. Since there are 5 seasons, and I happen to produce a show called Top 5 where I normally rank movies in a variety of categories, I do love to rank TV shows when it's applicable, mainly other anthology shows, which many anthology shows like a Black Mirror or Love, Death, and Robots, each episode is its own self-contained story, and I've ranked those before in other shows, so this will be the first anthology show. This will be the first time not only ranking when I finally do it, ranking seasons of a TV show, but it will also be the first time I have watched as much to prepare for an episode of Top 5. Because even the crazy episodes where I'm watching like 20 movies, still not the same as watching 5 seasons of TV where most episodes are around an hour long. I don't know what the total runtime is going to be for rewatching all this TV, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. And because I'm not reviewing it, I don't have to necessarily pay the same amount of attention as I would if I was reviewing. I don't have to take notes. Remembering from season to season's going to be pretty easy considering it's going to be new stories for each season. So I'm actually looking forward to it. Might be kind of my quasi-background show where I'm watching it but not always paying the most attention to it enough to where I understand which seasons I will enjoy more than others. And it's, quasi-background. I really want to watch these seasons. So all that being said, this season 5 of Fargo has really set me off on a long journey that I'm kind of excited to partake in. So it'll take a while before I actually do that episode of Top 5. But it also might not. We'll see. Sometimes I can burn through stuff pretty quick, especially if it's, maybe if I'm working while I'm doing it, I could really burn through it in a few weeks. So we'll see how soon I do it. But that is something to look forward to and a recommendation for you to go subscribe to my other podcast called Top 5, Ray Taylor Show Top 5. And check that out and subscribe to that. Let's take a quick break from the show. Listeners, are you ready to take your experience with the Ray Taylor Show to the next level? Dive into the Inspired Disorder Plus for just $5 a month. You unlock a world of premium content that's sure to satisfy your every entertainment and artistic craving. Imagine enjoying the Ray Taylor Show a full week completely ad-free in both audio and video formats. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Get exclusive access to live painting archives, be the first to lay eyes on new releases from the many faces, and enjoy members-only discounts and deals that'll have you coming back for more. With a treasure trove that includes a podcast back catalog of 14 unique shows and over 600 episodes, personal insights through Ray Taylor's own blog, and creative writing to spark your imagination, and an interactive Ask Me Anything section, Inspired Disorder Plus is a feast for the curious mind. Ready to elevate your entertainment game? Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become a member of an exclusive club. Dive in, indulge, and inspire your senses. Now let's get back to the show. But this season of the show, I think, is tackling some interesting themes. One of the big themes, the major themes, is debt. And the many forms of debt, kinds of debt that exist, and how those debts are paid. While some debts are, not paid. Some debts are even forgiven in interesting moments. But the idea of debts in this season is a big theme. The backstory of many of these characters, very dark. You have the mystery of who Dot's past, where she comes from, what her past is. We do get the answers to her past pretty early on. She's not the main mystery, but there is a lot more to her story that we find out towards the tail end of the season that gets even darker. And then there's an aspect of the show that is somewhat mirrored in the darkness of another character named Ollie, who is an interesting character, who's the, at least at the beginning, kind of the villain of the season, and a character who for me was confusing. There are aspects of that character that are confusing throughout the season. However, those confusions get laid to rest at the end of the season in a very satisfying way. I was so surprised that it not only answered the questions that I had and the confusion that I had revolving around this Ollie character, but it does it in such a way that I was not expecting the how great that moment is when we finally find out. But he's a character nonetheless that also comes from a dark past. So they share that in common, Dot and Ollie, both coming from and having a dark past, as it were. And I also enjoyed the politics of this season. John Hamm playing this character, Roy Tillman, who is a religious fundamentalist / libertarian sheriff of a small town who's using tax dollars to fund his this private militia and arm this private militia, and is somebody that promotes wife beating for educational purposes. So not the greatest guy, but definitely represents a type of person, a caricature, sure, on some levels, but a type of person that 100% exists in this country today. You also have Lorraine Lyon, who is the matriarch of the Lyon family. She's a billionaire, conservative, obviously, who feeds on debt. One of the major themes of this. One of the things that she does is she consolidates debt for people. But knowing that debt is something that is so difficult to exist without for most people in this country, and I'm sure many other capitalist countries, where you can't afford to survive on the money you make, and many people rely on credit cards in order to get by. And when it comes to credit cards and the interest rates on credit cards, they are the most toxic thing to ever exist in society, especially in a society that's predicated on capitalism. It's predicated on businesses having to show infinite growth forever. It's just absolutely absurd. But it's also a character that is openly acknowledges that she is above the law because of her money, and that the law is only there for the non-wealthy. It's only there to keep the non-wealthy in line. But it's not something that should ever be, investigating somebody of privilege and esteem and wealth. And this character also assumes that everyone who isn't rich is just lazy and begging for help, as most wealthy Republicans do, as most wealthy people do. And I have a theory about that. Aside from this show, I have a theory that a lot of wealthy people who think that the same thing, that everybody who's not wealthy, that like wealth is a choice, that poverty is a choice, that people who receive welfare on any level are lazy and don't want to work. I think my theory on that is that these wealthy people who are detached from reality in every way, right? They live in their own bubbles. They only exist really within their family bubbles and then business, right? But they're not living. They have no concept of life outside of their bubble. But the one thing that they do see is that their children, who are given everything, who are basically the welfare recipients of their parents are lazy and don't do anything and don't aspire to anything and are choosing to be lazy. And I think a lot of wealthy people base their overarching societal thoughts and assumptions on how their kids respond to growing up privileged and wealthy and spoiled. Because that's what it seems like. They all seem like all of society is somehow acting like their children are. And that like people receiving welfare are just lounging around not doing anything like these rich kids are, who don't have to work, who never have to work, who never really have to do, who never struggle. Like the idea and concept of struggle doesn't even exist in their worlds, because any kind of hardship that they may ever come face to face with generally gets solved with money. They're able to avoid the vast majority of hurdles in life because they come from money. So that's just my little theory on why it's so common for rich people to think. Meanwhile, failed corporations get welfare all the time. Rich people get government subsidies. Wealthy people get exponentially more money for doing bad jobs at everything than we spend on actually helping people in need. It's a very ridiculous. Like, there is a welfare system for wealthy people and corporations in this country that does not exist for people who actually need help. Like, there's no real bootstrapping going on in this country. It's just government funding wealthy people wanting to destroy the world in some way, whether it's directly or indirectly. So back to this show. The rest of the characters in this show are great. Ollie, like I mentioned, actually reminds me a lot of Javier Bardem's character in No Country for Old Men, another Coen brother film, Anton Sugar. You know, similar bob haircut and kind of has a calm demeanor, rarely speaks, but is intimidating. And this character, Ollie, a little bit more unhinged, which I like the added, and of course the kilt that he's wearing. The aesthetic of Ollie in this is a little bit more interesting, I would say, than Sugar. But characters, villains nonetheless, which I wouldn't be surprised if this character was in some ways modeled after that, considering this show is based on a Coen brother and their producers. But I think it's more of a nod to the Coen brothers in general. You also have, the North Dakota State Trooper, who Dot helps, a good cop, wanting to do the right thing, that rare breed of cop that exists. He's not really trying to change the police department so he's allowed to live, but he's still trying to do good in the world, which is a very rare thing for police. He's actually trying to protect and serve, which is something that is sadly missing from majority of law enforcement these days. We also have the Minnesota police. This character, she's in debt, right? Again, debt. She's got a husband that's has a dream of being a golf pro, which is one of the things that is causing her to be in debt. You have Dave Foley in this show, which is great, as the one-eyed lawyer for the Lyon family. You have Gator, who is Roy Tillman's son, and a deputy who is very brash and is also, because of his impatience and just ego, ends up fucking up a lot. And, of course, you have Dot's husband, Wayne, who is just the sweetest guy. You want to talk about... There's the guys who are like the golden retriever. He is the golden retriever of the show, and he's great. He's great, and just a sweet guy, just really sweet guy. I love all the characters in this, and seeing how they all, are all in the mix together. Different pieces on this chessboard of a season, seeing who is on whose side and how people change and grow over the course of the season is great. All the different arcs that are within this season. Very surprising, I would say, for some of the characters to see some of their growth In this, characters I never would have expected to root for or be on the same side of. But in the saying, the old saying of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, kind of makes that interesting bedfellows in this season, which I appreciate and was not expecting. There's also some great action set pieces, a great mystery in this season, and some darkness. As I mentioned, characters have some dark past that we find out about throughout the course of the season. But all in all, they are all great ingredients that come together and are put in a pan, thrown in the oven at like 350 for like, I don't know how long. But that pie comes out, that pie of goodness that is season 5 comes out nice and steaming and fresh and absolutely delicious. And I enjoyed every bite of the season. Absolutely. Let's take a short break from this episode. Listeners, if you're an art lover like I am, or simply somebody who appreciates unique creativity, I've got something you'll adore. Dive into the world of The Many Faces, an ongoing series of mesmerizing ink paintings on paper, painted by me. Each piece is a captivating blend of abstract and surreal, always presenting a face that tells its own story. The dedication behind this series is unmatched, with new paintings being released every single day. And if you're thinking about owning one, you're in luck. You can start with a 4x6 painting for just $20. And if you desire something grander, there are larger sizes with prices to match. Imagine having an original piece of art infused with emotion and mystery gracing your space. So if you're intrigued, don't wait. Check out the entire collection and get your own at inspireddisorder.com. Own a piece of creativity that truly stands out. Now let's get back to the show. But with all that said, I do want to talk about spoilers. I want to get into details of this show, things that happen, certain episodes, great moments in this season, all the things that I don't want to tell you because they might spoil you. So if you have not seen season 5 of Fargo, go on over to Hulu and check it out right now. I highly recommend it. It's a great season of television, and it's only one season. You're in, you're out, you're done. You don't have to watch any more Fargo if you don't want, but it's a great season, whether you're a fan of Juno Temple, as I was from Ted Lasso, or just a fan of the film Fargo, and you've never dipped your toes into the show. Or maybe you did, and you fell off when the seasons got bad. Either way, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, here's your warning. You have, right away, we know, in the first episode of this show, is episode 1 is ridiculous. We're introduced to Dot, our main character, one of our main characters, played by Juno Temple, right? And right away, we see she has a past, right? She's getting her fingerprints taken. She's brought into prison because there's a fighting erupts in a school board meeting over library money that wants to be spent on getting new books for the library. And as we know, I mean, first off, this takes place in 2019. As we've seen over the past few years, the types of people and the types of things that are happening to school libraries. The banning of books. So many bannings of books. So much so that Florida recently banned the dictionary because it defines sexual activity, I believe. I forget what the reasoning is, but it's absolutely ridiculous in some of these red states where books are being banned, primarily because they acknowledge ways of existing in this world that aren't straight, white, and Christian. Anything that goes against what they consider to be the norm is generally considered controversial and thus banned. And then they pretend like they're not actually banning these books, which is ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous, the level of denial these delusional people are in. But that's, we don't see what the inciting event is, but we do see the beginning of this season starting off with a melee taking place inside of a school board meeting. And during the chaos, Dot pulls out her trusty taser accidentally tases a cop that approaches her from behind. She didn't know it was a cop. Mistakes happen. So she gets brought in to be fingerprinted and all that stuff, and she's very concerned. So right away, we know that she's got a past. But we don't know. Is she a criminal? What is her thing? We don't know. But she's got a past. Very interesting way for it to start. And she's also, we see that she's not a fan of her husband, who constantly goes to his mom, who's the billionaire, for everything. She doesn't like that. She wants to handle everything herself. She wants to be self-sufficient and independent. She doesn't want to have to rely on her husband's mom to do anything, to fix things. We also have Ollie, the kilted killer. The guy who literally ate the debts of his former, I don't know if it was master or baron or whatever it is in the UK hundreds of years ago, where he eats the debts of his master. Another reference to debts, the theme of debt in this show. And I was confused. Part of this character, one of the parts of this character that I was confused about is he literally from hundreds of years ago? Which I believe, yes, is the answer to that. Which we get the answers to a lot of this at the very end of the season. But it was confusing watching it. And then also, he kind of just moves into this old lady's house. And I was confused of if he just moves in, just forced his way in, or if it's a situation where it's his mom. Like, I didn't know the dynamic between them, right? He was just like impromptu squatting in this place. And then there's the scene, I think, on Halloween where he's smearing himself with goat's blood on himself. And it's like, was that in the past or was that currently? We find out that was actually in the present day. He found the dugout for Roy Tillman and took a goat in there to sacrifice and smear the blood on himself. So that aspect of this season was confusing, but not enough to take me out. It's just like I don't get what's going on with that character, aside from the fact that he's really intimidating, right? This silent killer who walks and is like, has like morals, right? He knows when he's being taken advantage of. He knows, like, he kind of has respect, especially he has respect for Dot towards the end. But an interesting character nonetheless. Both of those characters very interesting and seem to be on the same level. There's a mutual respect between Dot and Ollie that forms throughout the course of this season, which is interesting to see how that culminates at the very end. But yeah, episode 1, just an epic episode. Seeing Dot go full badass mode, first with the home invasion when Ollie shows up to her home along with some other guys, thinking that it was going to be an easy job getting this woman, and not realizing that Dot is a tiger, and he should have been compensated more and educated before going into this situation. But her escaping from the home invasion is great. Then you have her escaping again from the car and going to the gas station, helping the cop out. That whole scene with in the gas station, her throwing the ice on the floor in the bathroom, hitting the guy in the face, and he slips on the ice and smashes his head on the thing, using the aerosol can at home to, like, as an impromptu flamethrower to, like, really maim one of the bad guys. Just some awesome stuff that happens in that first episode. Her putting the oil on the floor to make them slip when they come in through the door of the gas station. Great. Like, those opening moments were intense. And to see how badass Dot is, another aspect of this first episode that's like, okay, she has a past. Like, was she an assassin? Like at this point, I'm thinking, is she like an assassin or something like that? Still don't know what her past is, but like such a great first episode. Like if you're not hooked by the first episode of the show, I don't know what's wrong with you. I do not know. I can't understand how anybody could watch the first episode of this season and not get absolutely hooked. Obviously, maybe you don't like violence or something like that, whatever. But in general, I would say general audiences would get hooked. Then episode 2, we're introduced to Roy Tillman, the sheriff, which is kind of a badass scene. You got John Hamm in this hot tub just overlooking this vast, empty, untouched land. Absolutely gorgeous. Would love to live that kind of a lifestyle where you just have this super open, empty land, and you can just go out just soak in the hot tub and take while you're smoking your cigar and take it all in. Pretty amazing. We also see his son Gator, who is just the most. He is the guy that has the Punisher logo on his phone. He refers to himself. I mean, these aren't literal things of the character traits, but these are things that I could easily see Gator having as traits. Like he's the type of guy who would have the Punisher logo as a deputy cop, right? He would be the guy who refers to himself as the alpha male. He would refer to anybody who doesn't refer to themselves as an alpha male, refer to them as betas, right? He is that kind of a just douchebag conservative type of a guy. And they're both like hardcore libertarian guys, right? Despite the fact that they are the government, they have this delusion that they, as Roy Tillman's, using tax money to arm a militia for, wasting tax dollars to like give weapons to this like military cosplay group known as a militia. Just, there's people that are doing that in this country. That's why they're obsessed with the Second Amendment, because they think their delusional brain, like their 9-volt brain, thinks that if they own enough AR-15s that somehow they're going to be competition for the United States government or the FBI or just police departments in general, which is just absolutely insane. Because like tanks exist, jets exist. Like there's a lot of just bombs, drones, like military drones. Like there's a lot of things that like those militias that think they're all badass and they're going to be the next 1776 or whatever, right? The MAGA Republican Party, basically, who if ever tried to do it would fail, just as they did January 6th. Because they're all cosplaying as military people. They're not trained. They don't know anything. Some of them maybe have that background, but they're still... They're detached from reality enough to where they can't square, can't make things happen. Regardless, episode 2, we're introduced to the sheriff. We also have episode 3. You have we see Gator stealing evidence, like just doesn't care. Just like clearly acts like he owns everything because he's a deputy. He's got a gun. He's untouchable, right? But episode 3 sets up for the Halloween home invasion, which is great when there's like a montage of you have Dot and her daughter doing these crafting projects to booby trap the house because she knows that it's a matter of time before, Roy sends his goons to try and get her. So she's booby trapping the house. And then you see, Gator and his crew getting strapped up to go execute this plan. And all the while you have the song Smack My Bitch Up by, what is that band from the 90s? Smack My Bitch Up. Prodigy. the electric, the uh, EDM band of the '90s, which I loved. I liked Prodigy at the time. Great song to have play for this moment. As we know that Dot is a badass, so it's like you have these guys probably would be listening to this song if it wasn't a needle drop, where it'd be like, oh, smack my bitch, like they're getting ready to go smack this bitch up, but then when they go realize they're dealing with a tiger and that bitch is going to smack them up instead, it's great. Episode 4 is when you have the whole Halloween home invasion, and of course they're all wearing Nightmare Before Christmas masks, which I found to be delightful. It's just they're all like coordinated, wearing different Nightmare Before Halloween Christmas masks, which I enjoyed. A great episode 4. Episode 5, you have this David Attenborough kind of style voiceover as she's escaping this mental institution that she gets put in. And it's all about her, she's the lion, and you don't want to corner the lion because she's always going to find ways to escape. It's a great episode. And then you have the mom, you have the matriarch of the Lyon family, and the sheriff meet. And she hits him with the best takedown of his political beliefs. The political beliefs of, and she's a conservative. She's an old school like Republican conservative, but her takedown of the libertarian beliefs about him fighting for freedom without responsibility. That's what he's fighting so hard for, is freedom without responsibility, right? They want ultimate freedom. They don't want to have to be responsible for anybody else or anything else, right? The environment, other people, society in general mean nothing to them. They just want to have their own freedoms and everybody else can fuck off, right? And she's like, there's only one thing that exists that has freedom without responsibility. And one of Roy's guesses is, the president? I'm like, no, you dummy. You still have, first off, you don't have ultimate freedom as the president, and you have a lot of responsibilities. Now, there's some presidents that don't seem to acknowledge their responsibilities. That's very true. We've gotten a big example of what that looks like in the White House, but that's not it. The only thing that exists that has freedom without responsibility is that of a child, is that of a baby specifically, right? A baby has freedom without responsibility. And these libertarians basically are fighting to be babies, and I love that she points that out. And you can see how it hurts him. It hurts his feelings because she's right. Because she's right. Part of being a human being on a planet with other human beings is that there is a level of responsibility you need to have for at least your actions. So it's and my experience with libertarian, my personal experience with libertarians, is that they also act like babies. Not only are they fighting to have the life of babies, freedom without responsibility, but they act like children a lot of times. They also in this episode they end up leaving. She ends up leaving her kid with the cop, the woman cop, whose husband is delusional about being a professional golfer, which is a great moment when she leaves the kid there. Then you have episode 7. You have basically what seems to be a dream. I don't know if the whole episode, but Dot thinks that she finds this battered woman cult who make marionettes in order to move past their abuse and to give themselves new names and all of these things, right? But in this moment that is not real, we see Roy's previous wife before Dot. In this episode, we get more of Dot's past. We get the darkness of Dot's past as told through marionettes. We find out that she was basically adopted by Roy Tillman and their family at 15, right? Gator around the same age as her when Roy and his wife adopt this girl. And we find out that the wife would leave town, go on a trip, and leave Roy with the kid, knowing that he was going to sexually abuse this child, right? Basically, this dad figure abusing this 15-year-old child. And, of course, Gator probably there seeing it happen, knowing that his dad is molesting this girl that's his age. And then not only that, later on, the wife, I don't know if she disappears, dies, gets killed, and then Roy marries Dot, who used to be this 15-year-old girl that he would rape. So now Gator's, what would be like a stepsister, is now his mom. That's the type of family. First off, that's the type of kind of family dynamics that are sadly all too common in certain parts of this country, especially in parts where you have conservatives fighting for adults' ability to marry like 13-year-olds, which is literally something that's happening in 2024. You have conservative politicians fighting for an adult's ability to marry a child at 13. It's disgusting. And it's a reality. Because they do this sort of thing. This isn't like some completely out of nowhere fictionalized scenario. And there's so many examples of it. And it's like these politicians who do it themselves, who like marry these people that they first met when they were children, when they were, the politicians themselves were adults, but these women that they later marry, they first met and started relationships when they were children. And they don't have any problem with it. It's like, yeah, she was 13 when we started, when we were together the first time. But now we're married and we're both adults, so it's okay. Like, they don't see anything wrong with that. They don't see anything wrong with, like, grooming. The literal grooming of children, which also happens in religious, in Christianity as well, and other Mormonism. Most all religions groom people, but the active groomers tend to be ones that are tied to Christianity in some way. And it's hilarious. There's a lot of great moments in this season. There's a moment early on in the season where the Lyon family pose for a Christmas picture, and they all are given assault rifles to pose with to show their strength, which, of course, we've seen over the past few years, how every Republican Christmas photo is filled with assault rifles, because it's really what they worship. It's not like this fictional birth of a guy who wasn't even in their fictional book, wasn't born on December, but they needed to take Christmas away from the pagans in order to make it a Christian holiday. Same thing with Easter, which is by far the most stupid holiday. Both pagan holidays. Both have no correlation with their fictional book of the Bible. But even in that, it's not what they're celebrating. They're celebrating their guns. They're celebrating tools that were specifically designed to make eliminating life effortless. That is the thing that they worship. The thing that ends life effortlessly. That's what they worship. It is absolutely insane. I also love the first moment where Dot's at home watching TV, the first episode, and Ollie shows up wearing a bag of like a burlap sack with eye holes cut out and just walks up to her back door or whatever, and she's just seeing it, mouth agape, and just like, what is going on? And this guy shows up to the window and just opens up the sliding glass door because it's not locked, because it's a small Midwestern town. Pretty terrifying. And it's all windows, so it's like you can't hide in that house. It's not like somebody's got to peek in through a window to see if anybody's there. Like, you have a transparent house. Is also another great moment where it's Dot and the mom at her kitchen table, and the mom is like going in on her, and Dot stands up for herself. She's like, listen, bitch, like, you want to come at me, you better be prepared to come at me. I love that moment. I love that moment so much. Just putting people in their place who like effortlessly talk down, as her mom, as conservatives tend to do to people who are struggling, talk down. They think they're superior to all beings. Wealthy people, many of them think God anointed them with money, and that's why because God says they're special. So they feel enabled and empowered to talk down to everybody, and Dot's like, listen, you don't know me. Whatever you think your power is because you have money, if we wanted to rumble, you're dead. Like, you can't there's nothing you could do that would come close to the hell that Dot has crawled out of on her own. So I love that moment. Absolutely love that moment. Another great moment, which I mentioned earlier, the quote-unquote craft project with the daughter booby-trapping the home, stripping wires, breaking up light bulbs to glue to doorknobs, making putting giant nails into a bat, a zombie killer bat. Loved that. You know, how this Midwest mom is like, let's do a craft project, and all their crafts are like more destructive than Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. Another great moment when the cop brings the file to the mom, right, and offers, like, she's like, listen, you need to understand who this woman is, because she's not what you think all people are, that she's just lazy and looking for a handout. She hasn't asked you for shit. She's handled all of this on her own. She's escaped from them. She comes back acting like nothing has ever happened. She's trying to protect your son and your granddaughter throughout this whole thing. You should be on your knees thanking Dot for all that she's doing, instead of looking down on her and talking down to her and think that she's just some lazy person looking for a handout. When the cop gives her and then she offers the cop head security job, which is, kind of a nice thing, allowing her to get paid a really good salary to get out of this debt. But then you see the mom flipping through her file, through Dot's file, and just seeing the brutal abuse that she went through at the hands of Roy, right? Really seeing what she put up with and escaped, kind of bringing this billionaire back down to earth and showing this person what life is really like. There's another great moment when, towards the end, this delusion that these militias have and these Second Amendment nuts have, that they're like, oh, we're gonna take on the military, we're gonna overthrow a tyrannical government, as if we're not already existing in a tyrannical government. Like, open your eyes, you stupid fucks. But the moment where Roy calls in the cavalry, he calls in his militia, posting the live video with his fancy camera, like, we gotta, speaking in military lingo, to rile the troops up, all these cosplaying military guys, and how they drop the YMCA, the Village People's YMCA song as all of these cosplaying military dudes pull up in their, their Jeeps and their trucks and all that. I'm surprised they weren't flying 100 American flags off the back of them. But to hear YMCA, I want to take you to YMCA, as like all these militia guys are showing up with all their cool guns that the taxpayers bought for them. These welfare queens, these welfare military cosplayers that can't buy their own weapons, they have to siphon tax dollars in order to fund their little militia party. Absolutely hilarious. And I love how effortlessly they get turned down, right? They get the FBI shows up with a few actual trained soldiers, and, it's not like the military had to even use their the technology that the U.S. military has wasn't even needed. They just went old school. Let's just put we'll do man on man, right? We'll be your guys with guns versus our guys with guns. And guess what happens? They all pretty effortlessly get shut down, which would happen in every situation. There's never going to be a situation where a militia is going to win against the modern military. It's not going to happen. It's like, to think that's going to happen is just the most absurd. It's just the level of delusion that happens when you own toys to them. When they think that if they buy a weapon for military use, that all of a sudden they're going to be trained and experts. Like, they watch action movies like John Wick, like they're training, Oh, I could do that. Oh, yeah, I could do that. Sure. I also love the turn of the mom, the matriarch of the Lyon family, when she sees who Dot is and shows, like, towards the end when she comes home, when Dot comes home, and the mom finally shows her love, right? Just kind of amazing. Was not expecting that character to be so sympathetic all of a sudden. And then when we see that same character who all of a sudden gives Dot love, when she later drops the bomb on Roy, who's in prison, to tell him what his true punishment is, and something that only a billionaire can do, setting up this like cover of a debt consolidation thing for prisoners, but also giving these prisoners money for their commissary so they can buy their necessities. But it's basically this billionaire bought off all the prisoners in the prison Roy is being held at, in order to make sure he's beaten every day that he's there, to suffer all of the pain and suffering that Roy put Dot through. It's so crazy that at the end of this season, I am sympathetic and cheering for a billionaire conservative. But it's, this billionaire conservative actually did a good thing for once. So I don't know. I don't think it's all that. It's the most fictional aspect of this season, I would say, is the billionaire doing good things. And having respect for somebody who actually stands up for themselves and is independent and hardworking. That was a great moment to see. Yeah, he thinks he's badass because he's in prison, and he actually he's a guy who wants to be a baby, wants freedom without responsibility, but then when he goes to prison, he's like, I love it. I get to hang out with all the white supremacists. I get fed every day. I don't have any responsibilities. It's the no responsibilities that he really likes, not the freedom. It's just he's able to be as selfish as he wants to be in prison. But I loved my favorite aspect of this season was the end. When Ollie goes to the Lyon's house, right? Dot goes back home from grocery shopping, and her husband Wayne is sitting in the living room with Ollie just off camera, right around the corner. But you know he's there. Before you see him, you know he's there. But we get, in this moment, we get more of Ollie's story. We kind of get confirmation that he's actually been around a long time, right? When he ate the debts of his master or whatever hundreds of years ago, he's just existed for centuries and is all about debts being paid and that. And so I love that we get his backstory. I also love, it's so suspenseful, this moment. And the whole time, like when they're sitting there and they're talking in the living room, you get a sense that Dot is not intimidated by this guy. She's not like her husband, who's cheerful and like, you want to pop, all that stuff. He's like the golden retriever, but she's like, there's a mutual respect that exists between Dot and Ollie that I appreciate in this moment, right? And the whole time, I'm just waiting for him to be invited to dinner, right? That's the whole point. She got the groceries. They're going to be making some dinner. And eventually, not only does he become basically a member of the family in many ways, he gets brought in for dinner, offered the pop, offered a beer when they start making dinner. But the moment when he washes his hands, she's like, we're going to start making dinner. So you can either wash your hands and help, or you can get out of here and we can handle this another time, right? Cut to the slow motion of him washing his hands. Seemingly the first time he's washed his hands, and metaphorically him washing his hands of all of the things that he's done in his past, right? There's a metaphorical symbolism to him washing his hands as well. But I cheered when I saw him washing his hands in slow motion. Then we see, right, the whole season about debts, how those debts are repaid, and in the moment we see the power when a debt is forgiven. And when he takes a bite of the biscuit that he helped to make, and the smile, which seemed like the first time Ollie had ever smiled in his life, how he was using muscles in his face that he's never used before. The smile that Ollie gives is so perfect. Like, I absolutely loved how this season ended. Getting Ollie's backstory, the mutual respect that they have for each other, Ollie and Dot, and him breaking bread with the family, and him finally finding some joy, allowing that relief of the debt being forgiven. Amazing. Loved it so much. Perfect ending to this season. I'm so happy they ended with, filling in the gaps with Ollie. That was great. Never expected it to be so emotional, at the same time funny. It's such an emotional thing to see him enjoy this biscuit, but it's also hilarious to see how horrible he is at smiling. His smile almost seems like those cuts that you see with Ron DeSantis, who's got the super dry mouth and all of his things, and you see how he tries to smile. Very similar. Like, these are two people, Ron DeSantis and Ollie, these are two people that have never authentically smiled in their whole life. And to see them try and use those muscles in their face that they've never used before is just absolutely hilarious. And seeing Ollie share as much as he did with Dot's character, I mean, characteristic-wise, but also his past, both people are forces to be reckoned with. There's a mutual respect that they have, that they share over biscuits at that end moment. I also never expected to root for a conservative billionaire in this show. I root for a conservative billionaire at the very end. That person has to change. It was not the opening version of that woman. But seeing her give Roy his ultimate punishment, absolutely great. This is only something a billionaire could pull off. Also, seeing our show Dot love and respect at the end was great. Like realizing that she's a strong, independent woman who was actually protecting Lorraine's son and granddaughter. All that stuff was great. Finding out Dot's past, first being a foster child, of sorts for Roy, and then becoming his wife. And then also just seeing it puts into perspective the interactions that Dot has with Gator. Like when she sees him in her home in the Halloween home invasion, it's like, well, they clearly know each other, and she tells him like, shame on you. And it's like, oh, we don't know their past yet, that they are in essence like brother and sister in a lot of ways. It's so brutal. The end when Gator finds out that his dad thinks that his life is pointless now that he lost his eyesight. Absolutely brutal. All the while, the FBI knowing the big picture of what's going on and kind of effortlessly shutting everything down when the Civil War, as the militia thought they were going to be igniting, just kind of instantly gets ended. Like the delusion those who worship the Second Amendment have, thinking they can overthrow the government because they have some weapons, is absolutely hilarious, right? They didn't even need to use tanks to shut them down. And a great song as well. A great season that has inspired me, again, to go back and watch previous seasons in order to rank the different seasons of the show on my show Top 5. No idea when that will be, when I'll be able to finish watching them all. So go subscribe to Top 5 from The Ray Taylor Show now if you want to check that out. And the other episodes, they're fun. But I want to thank everybody for tuning into this episode of The Ray Taylor Show. I do hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Fargo Season 5. Don't forget to tune in on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more movie and TV show reviews. And join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform or over on youtube.com/inspired disorder. Until next time, enjoy the show. Subscribe to The Ray Taylor Show on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Purchase Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.